the 1976 Greek 20 drachmai coin. Tiny metal time capsule of democracy. Imagine holding a piece of pocket change that connects ancient Athens, the birthplace of democracy, to the turbulent rebirth of a modern nation. That's exactly what this 1976 Greek 20 drachmai coin is. On one side, the stern, bearded profile of Pericles in his distinctive helmet. On the other, the elegant columns of a small classical temple rising against the sky. Around the edges, the words Hellenic Republic, the value 20 drachmai, and the date 1976. For American audiences, this coin carries special resonance. The ideas of citizen government, public debate, and rule by the people that Pericles championed more than 2,400 years ago became foundational influences on the founding fathers. When Greeks themselves returned to democracy in the mid-1970s, after years of military rule, they put those same symbols back into everyday circulation. This is the story of that coin, how it was made, why it looks the way it does, and the dramatic history it carries. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Old World Coins Vault. Here we bring you the oldest, the rarest, and the most mysterious coins from around the world. Do you want to know which coin is worth millions? Which coin is hiding one of history's biggest secrets? And which coin looks ordinary today, but could make you rich tomorrow? So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's open the Old World Coins Vault. Flip the coin and you meet Pericles, Pericles in Greek letters. Born around 495 BC and dying in 429 BC, he was the dominant statesman of Athens during its golden age. His name literally means surrounded by glory. He was a brilliant orator, a skilled general, and the driving force behind the radical expansion of democracy in Athens. Under Pericles, ordinary male citizens gained unprecedented power. They could serve on juries, hold public office by lottery, and vote directly on laws and wars. He pushed through reforms that paid citizens for jury service so poorer Athenians could participate. He strengthened the navy, turned the Delian League into an Athenian empire, and most visibly launched the massive building program on the Acropolis. The Parthenon, the Propylaea, and the Temple of Athena Nike all rose during his leadership. Flip the coin and you meet Pericles, Pericles in Greek letters. Born around 495 BC and dying in 429 BC, he was the dominant statesman of Athens during its golden age. His name literally means surrounded by glory. He was a brilliant orator, a skilled general, and the driving force behind the radical expansion of democracy in Athens. Under Pericles, ordinary male citizens gained unprecedented power. They could serve on juries, hold public office by lottery, and vote directly on laws and wars. He pushed through reforms that paid citizens for jury service so poorer Athenians could participate. He strengthened the navy, turned the Delian League into an Athenian empire, and most visibly launched the massive building program on the Acropolis. The Parthenon, the Propylaea, and the Temple of Athena Nike all rose during his leadership. Pericles is often shown wearing a Corinthian-style helmet pushed back on his head. Ancient sources and later Roman copies of Greek statues, the most famous is a marble bust in the Vatican, and other collections explain why. He had an unusually elongated skull, and the helmet helped conceal it. The engraver of this coin side, Lambros Orphanos, captured that classic profile with dignity and restraint. Bearded face, steady gaze, the helmet's crest just visible. It is not a glamorous Hollywood portrait. It is the face of a serious public servant who believed Athens' greatness rested on the intelligence and courage of its free citizens. For Americans, Pericles feels familiar. His famous funeral oration, recorded by the historian Thucydides, sounds almost like a precursor to Gettysburg or the Constitution's preamble. Athens is an education to Greece. Its government favors the many instead of the few. It is called a democracy because power is in the hands of the whole people. When the United States was young, classical education was standard for educated men. Jefferson, Adams, and Madison read the Greek historians. The architecture of Washington, D.C. deliberately echoes the temples of Athens. Putting Pericles on a modern Greek coin in 1976 was a clear statement. Democracy is not a foreign import. It is our oldest inheritance. The other side shows a small classical temple with 4 Ionic columns and a simple pediment. Many people glance at it and say, Parthenon, but careful catalogs, including Numista, identify it as the Temple of Athena Nike, the Temple of Athena Victory, standing on a bastion at the southwest corner of the Acropolis, right beside the monumental gateway known as the Propylaea. This temple is tiny compared with the Parthenon. It measures only about 27 feet long. It was built around 420 BC, during the later years of the Periclean building program, or shortly after Pericles' death. Designed by the architect Callicrates, the Athenians dedicated it to Athena in her aspect as bringer of victory. Its friezes once showed battles against the Persians and Amazons, reminders that freedom had to be fought for. The original statue inside was of Athena Nike without wings, Nike Apteros, so that victory could never fly away from Athens. Ongrave Theodoros. Papagiannis rendered the temple cleanly and recognizably for the coin. Around it appear the words Elliniki Demokratia, Hellenic Republic, Drachmai, the large numeral 20, and the date 1976 split around the value. The edge of the coin is lettered with the same phrase, Hellenic Republic. Choosing this particular temple was smart design. It is instantly classical. It sits on the Acropolis that Pericles rebuilt, and its theme, victory, through democratic strength, fit the moment Greece was living through in the mid-1970s. To understand why this coin exists, we have to step into the recent past. From 1967 to 1974, Greece lived under a military dictatorship known as the regime of the colonels. The junta suspended civil liberties, censored the press, and ruled by force. In July 1974, after a failed coup in Cyprus and the subsequent Turkish invasion of the island, the military government collapsed. Constantine Karamanlis returned from exile and formed a national unity government. A referendum abolished the monarchy. A new constitution established the Third Hellenic Republic. By 1976, the new democratic government was ready to put its own face on the currency. The old junta-era coins with their phoenix and soldier imagery were replaced by a fresh series celebrating both ancient glory and the heroes of the 1821 War of Independence. Higher value coins featured classical figures, Aristotle on the 5 drachmae, Democritus on the 10, and Pericles on the 20. Lower denominations honored fighters of the independence struggle. The message was unmistakable. Greece was not inventing democracy in 1974. It was reclaiming it. The same people who invented the idea of self-government in the 5th century BC were now living it, again after a dark interlude. Minting tens of millions of coins with Pericles and the Temple of Athena, Nike put that message into every pocket, every market stall, every taxi fare. The coins were struck at the national mint of the Bank of Greece in Athens, numismatic. Composition is copper-nickel, roughly 75% copper, 25% nickel, weight about 11 grams, diameter 29 millimeters. For 1976 alone, more than 53 million pieces were produced, common enough that most Greeks handled them daily, yet special enough that collectors still seek nice examples today. The series continued with the same basic design through 1980, with some later spelling changes, from the formal Drachmai to the demotic drachmes. These coins circulated until Greece adopted the euro. On February 28, 2002, the drachma ceased to be legal tender. Overnight, ordinary pieces of change became historical souvenirs. Many Americans who visited Greece in the 1970s, 80s, or 90s brought a few home. Others find them in inherited collections or online marketplaces. In average circulated condition, they remain inexpensive, often under a few dollars, but higher grade or uncirculated examples attract more interest, and the story behind them is what gives them real value. The coin also carries a quiet lesson about continuity. Empires rise and fall. Dictatorships come and go. Currencies change. Yet the idea that free citizens can govern themselves, debate publicly, and build lasting monuments to their shared values has proven remarkably durable. Pericles articulated it on the Nix Hill in Athens. The American founders adapted it in Philadelphia. Modern Greeks reclaimed it in the 1970s and stamped it onto millions of copper-nickel discs so that no one would forget. When you hold this 1976 20 drachmae piece, You are not just holding metal. You are holding a conversation across 2,400 years, from the age of Pericles, through the struggle for Greek independence, through the dark years of the junta, and into the restored democracy of the Third Hellenic Republic. One side shows the man who helped invent the system. The other shows the architecture that still stands as its most beautiful physical expression. Together they form one of the most eloquent pieces of circulating money any modern nation has produced. And that is why a simple coin from 1976 still feels powerful. Today, especially to anyone who believes, as both ancient Athenians and modern Americans do, that self-government is worth defending. Let's go deeper into the man whose face still stares out from this 1976 coin, because understanding Pericles is the key to understanding why the Greek government chose him at that exact moment in history. Pericles came from an aristocratic family, yet he became the champion of the common citizen. In the middle of the 5th century BC, Athens was transforming from a typical Greek city-state into something the world had never quite seen before. Pericles expanded the power of the assembly and the law courts. He introduced pay for public service so that a poor farmer or craftsman could afford to leave his work and sit on a jury or serve in office. He strengthened the navy until Athens dominated the Aegean, and he poured resources into culture and architecture on a scale that still astonishes us. The building program on the Acropolis was not just decoration, it was a political statement. After the Persian Wars, when the Acropolis had been burned and smashed, Pericles insisted that Athens rebuild in pure white marble, bigger and more beautiful than before. The Parthenon became the centerpiece, but the smaller temple of Athena Nike, shown on our coin, was equally deliberate. It stood right at the entrance to the sacred rock, a constant reminder that Athena's victory over the invaders was also the victory of free citizens over foreign kings. The friezes once carved on that little temple showed Greeks fighting Persians and Amazons, mythical enemies who stood for tyranny and chaos. Every Athenian walking up to the Acropolis saw the message: freedom must be won and then defended. Money for these projects came in part from the treasury of the Delian League, an alliance originally formed to fight Persia. Critics accused Pericles of turning an alliance into an empire and of spending allied silver on Athenian glory. He answered that as long as Athens protected the allies and maintained the fleet, the city had the right to use the funds as it saw fit. The argument still echoes in debates about power and responsibility today. Pericles' private life was complicated. He divorced his first wife and lived openly with Aspasia, a highly educated woman from Miletus who was not an Athenian citizen. She was ridiculed by comic poets and even put on trial, yet Pericles defended her passionately. Their relationship shows a side of him that was unconventional for his time. When the Peloponnesian War broke out against Sparta in 431 BC, Pericles' strategy of avoiding land battles and relying on the navy and the long walls led to crowded conditions inside Athens. A devastating plague struck. Pericles himself lost family members and eventually died of the disease in 429 BC. The Golden Age did not end the day he died, but the loss of his steady leadership was felt immediately. Fast forward more than 2,000 years. In the summer of 1974, modern Greece was emerging from its own dark chapter. The military junta that had ruled since 1967 had collapsed after the Cyprus disaster. Ordinary Greeks poured into the streets, celebrating the return of political freedom. The new government under Constantine Karamanlis needed symbols that said, clearly and without ambiguity, "We are a democracy again, and we always have been at our best when we were free." So the mint received new designs. The phoenix and soldier imagery of the dictatorship years disappeared. In its place came faces from the classical past and the War of Independence. On the 20 Drachmai piece, Pericles and the Temple of Athena Nike formed a perfect pair. One side showed the statesman who had argued that democracy was the best system ever devised. The other showed the architecture that still stands as proof of what free people can create. Engraver Lambros Orphanos gave Pericles a serious, almost stern profile that matched the gravity of the historical moment. Theodoros Papagiannis rendered the temple, with clean lines that any Greek, or any tourist who had climbed the Acropolis would instantly recognize. These coins were not rare commemoratives locked in collectors' cabinets. More than 53 million were struck in 1976 alone. They clinked in the pockets of taxi drivers in Athens, fishermen on the islands, students in Thessaloniki, and farmers in the countryside. A 20 drachmai coin could buy a newspaper, a cup of coffee, or a short bus ride. Every time someone spent one, they were handling a miniature declaration of democratic identity. The series continued for several years. In 1982, the spelling on the coins changed from the formal drachmai to the everyday drachmes, reflecting a broader shift in the Greek language debate. But the core design, Pericles and the temple, remained. Only when Greece prepared to join the Eurozone did the drachma's long life come to an end. On February 28, 2002, the old currency ceased to be legal tender. Overnight, everyday coins became historical objects. For American collectors and history lovers, this piece carries special appeal. It is affordable. Nice circulated examples are still easy to find. Yet it is packed with meaning. It links the classical roots of Western political thought to a modern European nation's recovery of liberty. It reminds us that democracy is not automatic. It can be interrupted, as it was in Greece between 1967 and 1974, and it must be deliberately restored and then guarded. Look at the coin again. On one side, a man who believed that the power of government should rest with the people. On the other, a temple built to celebrate victory and the hope that freedom would never leave the city. Between them, the simple words, Hellenic Republic, and the date, 1976, the year a nation that had invented democracy put that invention back into daily circulation. International market value. Collectors note a few design differences, mainly on the temple pediment side. Type A, most 1976 coins. Inverted V-off triangle shape in the pediment. Type B, mainly 1978-1980, circle in the pediment. There are also minor rim thickness, differences on some 1976. Coins, thin rim, 0.7 mm versus thicker 0.9 mm, and variations in the size of the edge lettering. These are minor varieties and do not add significant premium for ordinary examples. Genuine striking errors are uncommon and can be worth more when dramatic and certified NGC PCGS. Examples include broad-struck coins, reverse brockage, off-center strikes, or struck on wrong planchets. One documented NGC MS64. Broad-struck with reverse brockage had a starting auction. Price around, roughly $5 to $7 million plus, with final prices depending on eye appeal and severity. Major, certified errors can sell for hundreds to low thousands of dollars. Minor die cracks, weak strikes, or planchet flaws usually add little or nothing. Most circulated examples, like the ones in your photos, which show wear and toning, typically sell for $50, $500 in the open market. eBay sold listings, dealers, etc. Nice uncirculated or lightly circulated pieces with good eye appeal can reach $500, $20,000. Catalogs, Foronum, Numista, NGC, World Price Guide estimates generally list a range of roughly $2,000 to $70,000 depending on condition. These are retail selling prices. Dealer buy prices are usually lower, often 30–60% of retail for common circulated pieces. That is the full story of this small copper-nickel disc. It is not just Greek history. It is a chapter in the longer human story of people deciding again and again that they will govern themselves. And every time someone in the United States picks up one of these coins, whether found in a relative's drawer, bought from a dealer, or inherited from a trip long ago, they are holding a tangible piece of that unfinished story. From the rocky hill of the Acropolis in the 5th century BC, to the mint in Athens in 1976, to your hand today, the conversation continues.